Good morning. How'd you like that clap? How'd that sound? Hope you didn't have headphones on. Ha! So today we're going to peel away some of the outside, get the planks off, the walk boards, and then we're going to start to put the membrane on that's going to waterproof the footing so the water doesn't come down, hit the walls, seep underneath there where that only weak connection on the building is. Because if you remember in the previous video, I'll link it right there. As a matter of fact, that's the whole playlist. We did a monolithic pour with the walls and the ceiling all at the same time. So this thing is bulletproof. So we're gonna get busy on that, show you how it all goes down, and talk a little bit about the membrane, and then we're gonna answer your questions from the last video. And so make sure you stay focused until the end of the video. Holy moly, we got everything stripped down, we got things cleaned up. I was telling Greg it's like just as big a job to break down the job as it was to put it up.
Yeah, takes a lot of work all the way around. You're not done till you're done, so yeah, we keep hammering at it. So
now we were going to answer some of your questions that you guys left on the previous video. So he actually printed them out, and then I'll use the phone. So if you see us looking down, that's what we're looking at. We're just reading your questions. And then also Greg's going to give you his website, which is
icfmissouri.com.
And he can ship that stuff anywhere in the continental U.S., right?
Right.
Right.
Anywhere.
So all you have to do is get a hold of him. He can answer your questions. You can place an order, and they can ship it right to your front door. So make sure you use that website. I'm actually going to leave it in this video in the description, show more tab, also the first comment. And I'm going to go back to all the videos prior, and I'm going to leave them there. So in case you're just catching this build series and you're like, what are they talking about? I want to go watch all those videos in the playlist. You'll go back and check them out, and all that information will be there for you, because we want to make sure that Greg answers your questions. And if you're going to buy something, why not buy it from a Homestead homie?
I agree.
That's right. All right, so what, you got a first question lined up?
So, so basically, this is extruded polystyrene, and it acts just like you would have a styrofoam cup. Let's talk about the the damp proofing part of it. We do put waterproofing around it. That's really to handle bulk water. Most waterproofing is really not waterproofing. It's more like
water deterring.
Yeah, it deters the water. So, we're trying to handle really the bulk water that would come down the side of the wall.
Right.
Most of the time, you'll want to do that with your guttering or your tapering
pitch
of the
off the landscape. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you want to get the water away from the wall, but sometimes water will drive against your wall and it drops down close to the foundation.
Right.
So you want to manage the bulk water, but most waterproofing is designed to handle the vapor that comes from the ground. So you always have to have something in between there, and this polystyrene is pretty good at doing that. It doesn't absorb water. It basically will act as a vapor barrier, but because they're blocks, there are seams in it, water will have a tendency to penetrate through there. So we want to make sure that we have something to handle the bulk water, and then some of the vapor that comes through.
And then what do you say about the off-gassing? A lot of people asked about that.
Okay, so as far as off-gassing goes, there's two concerns about it. Is one, once it's in the home, will it off-gas? Extruded polystyrene, or excuse me, expanded polystyrene will not off-gas. When they make it at the manufacturer, they basically put it in a mold and they inject it with a gas that will cause that styrene to expand, and that's why they call it expanded styrene. It blows into shape and the mold holds it there, and then when it cures, all that stuff is gone. There is no residual gases that you can that off gas from the material.
Right. So by the time they make it, it sits in the factory and it gets to your house. I mean, that's done deal.
Yeah, most styrofoam products will do that anyway. Expanded polystyrene is probably the best. It doesn't really ever need after that gas that's just used to expand it is gone. It's gone within.
There's nothing there.
Yeah. So the other issue, I heard one comment made. They were concerned about what would happen if you caught fire, and that is a concern on regular residential, commercial projects. You have to cover it with some kind of a fire-rated product, which most of the time is a drywall product.
Right.
But
is that just on the interior, not the exterior?
Not on the exterior,
right.
Because the exterior,
dirt and everything.
Even if it was to burn,
right.
It would go out into the atmosphere. But in a closed space, you really want to cover it.
Right.
But that's with everything. So if you start your house on fire, basically wood is toxic if you breathe it in, right?
Right.
So
and fiberglass from your insulation and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Your carpet, your furniture,
right.
Your clothing,
and you won't be in there anyways. You're going to be running out.
Right. Right. So. It does resist fire. It won't really burn,
right.
But it does have a horrible smell when you do it. So
just like burning a styrofoam cup, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, like if you have fluid inside of a styrofoam cup and you light it on fire, it takes a long time to get through just because the water acts as a repellent on the other side.
Right.
One of the other questions you guys are asking about is the floor inside the root cellar. Why isn't it concrete? Why is it gravel? Are you keeping it gravel? For root cellars, the optimal floor is a dirt floor. You want to be able to have some moisture in there. Root cellars like 95, 98, almost 100% humidity, and that also helps keep your root crops store longer over a period of time through the winter and into the spring. So yeah, we kept it as a dirt floor. We put some gravel down there so we can walk in there just in case it was moist, like we don't want to be walking in the mud. And then on the outside, because it's almost 10 feet down, we didn't really put any drain tile or anything like that. When we opened this whole hole up, there was no moisture at 10 feet down below, right?
Right.
Yeah, so we shouldn't have any problems with that. We might have a little at first because the water will be seeping in and kind of compacting the soil, and some of it might make through. But after that, it should maintain just the earth's you know, regular moisture, which should be just enough to help with the root cellar and keep it at a high humidity. And if you have one and you don't have that kind of a floor, maybe you have a concrete floor, you can also put like buckets of water in there or something like that, just to introduce moisture to the atmosphere.
Right. In a normal basement, you would want to try to get that out of there. And in a normal situation, you have electricity that you could pump it out.
Yeah.
So in this situation, we had some challenges. You know, one, we're not that worried about the moisture here. But if you were worried about moisture in a basement that you were doing ICF, then you would want to manage the water. So that's managing a bulk water. In this situation, we do have a little bit of a grade. We could have dug a trench and dug it all the way out.
Sub pumps.
Right. So you could gravity feed it to daylight, which a lot of people do if they have a walkout.
Right.
And I've done those processes before, but it's very difficult to handle. You know, I get in these conversations with a lot of builders about, do you put the drain tile on the outside? Do you paint it on the inside? Do you put a sump pump on the outside and on the inside? So everybody has a little bit of an opinion about how they should do it. My contention is that if water gets under the foundation, which it will, water is pretty invasive, and bulk water will get under your basement. And generally speaking, you would, when they pour your basement, they pour the gravel in, they put the footings in, put the gravel in, then they put a vapor barrier on top of that. And then if you're in a place that's prone towards bulk water, then they would put a sump pump in there, and then you electrically pump it out, or you use a ram pump or some other way to get the water out.
And the concrete guy even said that he's seen floors actually start floating in basements like that if they're not properly drained. So yeah, it's something you want to address if you don't want the moisture. But in this case, we do want the moisture.
Right. So we don't care about that. So
yeah. So that was even easier for the project.
So at some point in the game, if Doug decides that he wants to make this a more finished space down below and he wants to use it for whatever, then there's always that opportunity to open up. You know, we're going to have a stairway going down right through the center, which a lot of people again ask us about. So we're kind of rambling here a little bit from one question to another. But basically, you saw the opening that we created there. That'll be our stairway. We made it a little larger than what we wanted. Because we're going to close in the top, and we just needed to make sure that we had enough headroom to get down there, and so we're going to build that out later on and put the steps in. But if you ever wanted to put a concrete floor, it's nothing to come in and fill it in the rest of the gravel, put the vapor barrier in, and pour a concrete slab.
And then another person asked if this was going to be used as a tornado shelter. We live in Missouri. We're not really in Tornado Alley, but we have had tornadoes, you know, lots of times. I remember as a kid, an apartment down the street from us had the roof ripped off, and it was right, you know, like in the backyard. So we do get tornadoes here. A few years before we actually moved here, they had one come through this exact area, and some of the houses were messed with, and a lot of the trees were blown over. So yeah, this has enough rebar, and with the monolithic pour, that really strengthened up the whole thing, right?
Yeah, right.
And so we have a really good tornado shelter, fallout shelter, whatever you want to call it. We're actually going to put a couple of cots down there so Stacy and I can utilize this space in the heat of the summer, and then we'll also have all of our food storage down there, so if we had to spend some time down there, even some water, we would be able to, you know, basically bunk down there and you know, survive and make it. We also showed you guys the vents, so we'll have air intake and all that stuff. So you know, it's a very sustainable place for any kind of emergency or thing that we need to seek shelter for. Right. Like, why didn't we just use regular concrete forms and stuff like that? In our case, we didn't own any concrete forms. Greg didn't have any, so we would have to rent them. So if we went down to the local rental store and we rented some forms, they're not too bad, like if you have them for a week. But we ended up like this project, you know, with the cave-ins and the weather. I mean, it was like 5 or 6 weeks, you know?
6 weeks at least.
Yeah, so I mean, that would have broke the bank. So the nice thing also that even the concrete guy mentioned on is you put these ICF forms up. You guys saw how easy they go together. And then you fill them with concrete and you leave them. You just walk away. You just take the bracing down and it's game over. So it's a lot less labor intensive. And in our case, it definitely saved money and we pick up a lot of R value.
Right. And the other thing that the benefit is that these are stay-in-place forms. So, so once you put them up, they are a little more tedious when you initially get started. And once you learn how to do them and you learn how to assemble them, a lot of people like Legos. You know, they stack up on top of each other, and it's a fairly straightforward process. This was a fairly simple building, and then it was square. But this is sophisticated. This building here with this concrete roof like this. It is a step above. We've done them like this where you can drive a car on top of them, 100 pounds a square foot. I think this one was rated at about 60 pounds a square foot. This is going to be an enclosed building, so it has, you know, there are a lot of, again, unique things about this. But the forms stay in place. You never have to pull them off. The other advantage, like if you're building a conventional house and you want to put a basement in, a lot of people want to finish their basement at some point in the game. So these particular forms, if you see, or actually all ICF forms now, have a place where you can mount your finishes right directly onto the form, so that you don't have to do additional framing.
Right.
So it's fairly inexpensive, usable space. So once you've insulated, you know, the concrete is the concrete, so it costs the same. And I think there was really minimal difference between what it cost you to have a conventional, about $12 or $13 a foot to have conventional foundations poured. If you had someone do this one, you might pay $14.50 to $16.50, depending on the complication of the project. The bigger they are, you know, the bigger your house is. We've done them basements only. We've done, you know, second floor, two-story with concrete roofs on the top of them. The bigger the project, the more it makes sense to have this insulation put around.
Right.
And I had one of the, you know, a sales rep from an ICF company had explained to me and showed me that, you know, no one would intentionally stand in the ground. He was saying if you have a winter storm come and you have a winter coat on and you stand in the ground without any pants on, you'll die of hypothermia because the ground will actually suck the heat out of you.
Yeah.
Right. So you're doing the same thing when you're building a house with an in-ground foundation, that you're not, if you don't insulate it, then all of the heat that you're generating in conditioned space is going right into the ground.
Right, yeah, right through the concrete.
And so it makes a lot of sense. We built them, well, I built my father-in-law's home, about 4,000 square foot finished, 25 upstairs, 15 downstairs. And he came out with nothing special, just insulated walls all the way up to the ridge. And his electric bill on 4,000 feet is $50 a month. And about $50 maybe in cost of gas for cooking and his hot water heating. Yeah. And he could easily handle that with solar panels and doing, you know, a few minor things, but that's no additional cost. And I think it's one thing that a lot of people don't realize. Yes, there is some upfront money that you have to pay to do something like this, but if you're paying for utilities and you're on the grid, or you're going to buy solar, you have to buy less solar, you have to buy less air conditioning, less heating, all of that stuff is reduced. So the price offsets itself pretty significantly. And if you're on the grid and you're paying for electricity, no one ever believes that electricity is going to be cheaper.
Right.
So this is something that's passive. Once you put it in, you never have to worry about it. It never breaks. It never has to be repaired. It's there working for you day in, day out for as long as you own the property.
It's going to save you money. So Austin wanted to know too, like we went with the Quad Lock brand blocks, and he wanted to know, like, what was the difference? Why did we pick that? And then, like, how does it compare to something like maybe the Firefox blocks
or something like that?
Yeah.
Well, Quad Lock has a little bit more flexibility in it, in that because it's a kind of a panelized system that you can build it any way that you want it. Right. You can make curved walls with it. You can do a lot of those types of things. The other thing is that with Fox blocks or some of the older molded blocks, which we do have a distributorship to for Bill Block, which is also a molded block, is that they have a lot more webbing in them, and so they're a little bit more prone towards floating. What will happen is when you pour them into a highly webbed product, that concrete wants to push up, and then it also has the problem of creating voids in there. So that kind of leads me to this. This one has a very minimal structure, so that when you pour the concrete in, the concrete will flow around the bracing in the forms themselves, and the concrete will consolidate a little bit better.
Right.
And they're fairly easy to put together. They're lightweight. They ship cheaper. You know, so those are the major benefits of it. That was kind of a question that got asked quite a bit about why we didn't birate the walls.
Yeah, right. And then also this Quad Lock system that we did use is 3 inches thick on the panels on the exterior and interior. Isn't that the thickest that you can get?
Well, Quad Lock will actually, because the way the ties are modular, and we can go up to an R80, which is a significantly more insulation and have a narrow 8-inch cavity. Most blocks are 2 1/4 or 2 1/8 or 2 3/4 inches thick. So this is a full 3 1/8 inch thick wall. So it's pretty significant.
That's why we went with that versus something that you could get at Menards or something like that. So make sure you check out Greg's website.
ICFMissouri.com.
Right, and then you guys can check out, he also offers other blocks. He can get them right to your door, and then you don't have to go to that big box store. You can actually get stuff from a Homestead Homie, and he'll ship it right to you. Any more other questions you think, or you think we kind of...
Well, yeah, well, real quick, I think, you know, you really don't want to vibrate these forms that much because what happens, it creates a lot of pressure on the bottom of the form. So sometimes if we feel like we're going to have a consolidation issue, we'll tap the edges of the forms on the bottom, which will be enough to consolidate the concrete around anything that might happen. But we're pumping at, you know, at about a 6 slump, which some people had asked us.
Right.
So one gentleman
There's a lot
asked,
of concrete experts out there.
Right, there are a lot of concrete experts. But when you're pumping concrete, it's pretty fluid anyway, so it's not likely that you're going to have many voids in something like this,
Yeah.
especially using the Quad-Lock product.
Because there's less webbing.
Less webbing, exactly. So.
I think the pump truck was awesome too, right?
Oh yeah, it's always nice to have a pump truck. Anybody that's done any concrete work
Yeah.
knows that, you know, having a good operator that can place the concrete right exactly where you want it, it's always easier on your back. And for 2 old guys to be schlepping, pulling that concrete out, it really helps to have that placed right exactly where you want it.
Now, you know, one of the biggest questions that we actually got on that video was, what happened to my hat? You guys are on it about this hat. It actually flew off when I was brush hogging. It caught in between the tractor and the brush hog, and it went through the brush hog. But I'm gonna wear it. I'm gonna keep wearing it till it actually just seams right apart, and I can't put it on anymore. And you know, it bugs you guys, some of you, and some of you think it's just a hoot. So again, I thank Greg for coming out and helping us with all this project. Make sure you check out his website,
ICFmissouri.com.
because if you check that out, even for projects down the line, you could actually make a better house on your off-grid property, something that's going to retain your heat and your cooling better, especially if you're going to be using solar power. It has a higher R value. It's very easy to work with, and you know, you guys have watched this whole process from start to almost finish, and all the benefits that come with it we just ran down. And even if you're just building your house, it's going to be a good way to go. So again, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can, if you want to ask some questions, or you have anything else that you need from me specifically, you can email me at greg@icfmissouri.com, and I'll try to respond to any of your questions that you have. So.
Yeah. And your website?
My website is ICFmissouri.com.
They say you have to say it like 3 or 4 times before it actually registers. It's
like
ICFmissouri.com. All right, guys, don't forget, you can always check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'll see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. Hopefully you got a nugget out of this video, and if you were ever thinking about making that move or starting your project, make sure you get a hold of Greg and line it all up so you can have all the proper material there so you can build the best place that you can build.
All right.
All right, we'll see you guys on the next one.
Hey guys, thanks for watching our video. You might want to check out these videos.
And if you want to become a Homestead Homie, click the picture of us below.
We will see you tomorrow.